William Walker, born in Suicide Slum Metropolis, was drafted into the Vietnam War back in 1955, which lasted 20 years. So during his time serving his country, he became a masterful soldier, quickly rising up the ranks, becoming a black beret, then an army sergeant, serving 3 tours of duty without serious injury. So when he finally returned home, he found it difficult to adjust after being accustomed to the order and discipline of military life, like when he seen drug dealers serving drugs on the front stoop of his family's apartment building, which quickly escalated into violence after one of the punks didn't listen to his advice to stop, but instead disrespected the veteran. So Willie took it upon himself to lay hands on the hoodlum, who next cowardly pulled out a concealed firearm and shot Willie in the back, instantly paralyzing him, which would later leave him unable to speak and barely able to breathe on his own, as he was now forever bound to his bed, a quadriplegic, boiling with anger, consumed in his thoughts while stuck staring at the ceiling. As time progressed, he would witness a murder outside his window by, unbeknownst to him at the time, Sugar Man, a hitman from the organized crime syndicate known as the Intergang, that often uses technology from the hellish planet of Apocalypse. Meanwhile, elsewhere at that very moment, beyond Earth, the New Genesis High Father, Isaiah, the Inheritor, ruler of the paradise planet called New Genesis, and the leader of the New Gods, would choose William Walker to serve the gods while becoming a god but apart from the gods, only linked to the source of all things, to be given the great honor and sacred mission and become the Grim Reaper to the gods, which he would unsurprisingly accept, as he next transformed into the ever-present fear that sweeps through the universe on swift, silent skis, instantly vanishing lives with just a touch as the messenger of death known as the Black Racer, which the new gods fear, as he also delivers the correcting factor for any imbalance of forces in the cosmos. So now that Willie was the herald of death for the new gods, he was relentless, powerful, and unshakable in his purpose, after the first Black Racer was destroyed because he veered away from his objective. So now, the new Black Racer first mission was to retrieve the soul of Sugar Man, who was in possession of a bomb from the planet Apocalypse that could level a city. Subsequently, after every mission completed, the Black Racer was secretly transitioned back to Willie Walker, still a mute quadriplegic, in the care of his sister Verna Walker Johnson and her doctor husband Ray Johnson. Furthermore, as days went by, Nathaniel Adam, also known as the superhero Captain Atom, would be in a near-death coma after a deadly battle with the evolved android Red Tornado. So his fellow superhero friends, consisting of Booster Gold, Black Canary, and the second Mr. Miracle, Scott Free, rushed him to Stellar Studios, home of Infinity Inc., for help from Henry King Jr., also known as Brainwave Jr. Meanwhile, in the astral plane, Captain Atom, accompanied by a now reformed Red Tornado and Swamp Thing, who can astral project, was being chased by the Black Racer. Luckily, they were there to help Captain Atom escape death before he inevitably recovered from his coma. Soon after, Captain Atom would have recurring nightmares about the Black Racer and his pursuit for his soul, which coincidentally, he would indeed encounter and attack the Black Racer, who came for the soul of his pregnant female friend that was being rushed to the hospital after she collapsed while her unborn child was being strangled with her umbilical cord. Luckily for Captain Atom, he was only able to fend off the Black Racer because the Black Racer was being merciful and didn't want to harm Captain Atom because he wasn't his intended target. Furthermore, on Captain Atom's 50th birthday, he would make a birthday request for his friends to help him travel back into the astral plane to see his deceased wife one last time. So after much convincing, they would oblige. However, something would go wrong when he started to absorb his silver skin, which caused the bridge between both worlds to disconnect, thus shutting down his lifeline, as he was now in the presence of both death, which the Black Racer being death as the inevitability, while the other being death as mercy, compassion, and the release, as Captain Atom sadly next entered Purgatory. Sometime later, in New Genesis, the Black Racer would claim the soul of Mr. Miracle's wife, the female Fury Warrior, Big Bertha, after her intense battle with the mind-corrupted trio, Beatrice, the Costa, Wonder Woman, and Obsidian. So Mr. Miracle decided to go to the realm of the Black Racer known as Hades, which is the afterlife of the gods, so he could retrieve his wife by entering a passageway only meant for gods, which he currently wasn't. Nonetheless, he would initially fail the rescue mission, but later, after stealing the god powers from the source, he would head back into Hades, engaging in an everlasting war between New Genesis and Apocalypse, before he wished to liberate them all, which brought forth the Black Racer, who engaged in combat with the god tier Mr. Miracle, who surprisingly defeated the Black Racer by blasting him away. Sometime after, fast back, one of the youngest new gods had invented a pair of arrow pads that he used to race against the Black Racer to save another young new god named Isak from the Black Racer's death touch. which he impressively did, after his arrow pads released an incredible burst of speed. Furthermore, back home, Willie would be back in the care of his loved ones, when his sister, after leaving the room, felt her marriage was suffering for it. However, her husband felt otherwise, when on the other side of the door, Willie, as the Black Racer, would be summoned by the Source to take on another grim mission, but this time a death battle between the scourge of Apocalypse, Galactus the Cruel, and Darkseid's noble son, the champion of the Astral Force, Orion, the god of war from New Genesis. So in a fierce shrieking wind that quaked every fiber in their bodies, while flinging surrounding debris everywhere, the Black Racer took Galactus to the afterlife, as a heavy silence next fell on the city in the wake of the sudden gust of wind. As time progressed, the Black Racer will return from one of his missions in the nick of time to transform back into his normal state when his cousin, Tammy Brown, came to pay him a visit and temporarily helped take care of him. When later on, the school teacher, Jose Delgado, who was secretly the superhero vigilante gangbuster, came to obtain any information from Tammy about the shooting of his friend who was her ex-boyfriend, Jerry White, son of the Daily Planet's managing editor, Perry White, when suddenly the essence of the Black Racer lifted itself out of Willie, allowing only Delgado to see him, and next guided him outside away from the eyes of Tammy, so to teleport him at the very location of the shooters, while simultaneously rearranging the molecules of Delgado's clothing into his gangbuster costume, before the Black Racer vanished. Succeeding this, it will be revealed the Daily Planet photographer Jimmy Olsen was also hospitalized after two being shot, and now mysteriously in critical condition with Jerry, as they had no vital organs damaged. So the Black Racer, who can be perceived only to those he chooses or those who is near death, would arrive and reveal to Clark Kent, who he knew was Superman, that a female demon of incalculable evil named Angelica Blaze, the ultimate temptress and eternal deceiver, was responsible for the boy's situation, and he was going to help him rectify their condition. So after also rearranging the molecules of Clark's suit into his Superman costume, the Black Racer conjured up a boom tube, which is an extra dimensional portal that allows for instantaneous travel between anywhere in the universe and beyond, to take Superman to her dark, smoldering, damned netherworld of unending torment, to face her alone in her realm where living souls are drawn to against their will and denied their destiny for all eternity. Unfortunately, in the end, Superman was only able to save Jimmy Olsen's soul after defeating Blaze, as sadly Jerry will go on to perish and his soul next collected by the Black Racer, to be brought to the afterlife through the tunnel's light into eternal life. Moreover, a time after, Willie will be summoned as the Black Racer to the hospital bedside of a critically wounded man now on life support named Victor Lanza, who was a quiet but brave, timid, generous, and caring man to all. However, the Black Racer paused at the sight of the old dying insurance broker, wondering what was the significance of Victor's life. So the Black Racer used his powers to perceive Victor's past life, only to discover, unaware to Victor, he had a piece, perhaps just a fragment, of a great power called the anti-life equation within him, which is a formula for total control over the minds of sentient beings that is highly sought after by the universal threat known as Darkseid. Moreover, when John Henry Irons, also known as Steel, was betrayed and killed by an unknown assailant on the moon, Superman pleaded for the Black Racer not to take him, which fell on deaf ears when the Black Racer personally decided to honorably escort Steel into eternity, which Superman, not understanding the concept of death, felt he had to attack the Black Racer in order to free Steel, which he failed miserably. So next, Superman decided to continually plead to the Black Racer to spare the life of Steel. However, the Black Racer informed Superman he doesn't have the authority to resurrect or intervene in what him and Steel's plans were to stop the ultimate conquering force known as Imperiex. However, shockingly, the Black Racer did next act against Imperiex when he was convinced by Superman to somehow manipulate natural law. So unbeknownst to Superman, the Black Racer evoked Steel's death by exploiting the law of life and death when he took Steel to the planet Apocalypse to be resurrected by Darkseid, who encased him in the dreadful uber weapon, which is an Imperiex shell known as the Entropy Aegis. Succeeding this, the Black Racer will go after Shallow Norman, also known as the third Mr. Miracle, who was strapped to a missile in order to be intercepted by an aerial and missile defense system as part of $1 billion challenge if he could escape, which the money will be donated to American orphans who were in attendance for the event. However, the missile was sabotaged after the explosive bolts from the decoupling was intentionally removed. So after a long pursuit where the Black Racer was chasing after Mr. Miracle's existential expression of fate, Mr. Miracle would use his new Genesis mother box to jump through time and space, but still unable to shake and escape death, even after managing to steal one of his skis, which seemingly the Black Racer was intentionally buying Mr. Miracle time to figure out a way to fix his dire situation, knowing he can summon any one of his skis back at will. Surprisingly, the Black Racer would use that time to question the source about his purpose, receiving no response, before continuing his pursuit of Mr. Miracle, who would eventually figure out the jealous Janolan, who was the first magician to work with military ordnance in his performance act, purposely compromised the missile, which the Black Racer would pay him a visit for, before Mr. Miracle, now back from the astral plane, managed to survive the stunt. Following this, the Black Racer submitted himself to the source to be destroyed for disobedience like the prior Black Racer, which went unanswered, as the source didn't respond. Moreover, when the most feared ruler in the galaxy, the embodiment of evil known as the Dark Lord of the hellish planet of Apocalypse, Darkseid, faced the most dreaded force in the universe, the destroyer of civilizations known as the Devourer of Worlds, Galactus, who had his eyes set on Apocalypse, surprisingly, it will be Orion to intervene, but not to aid his tyrant father, only to challenge those who come to take away his glory of defeating him. So he battled the Herald of Galactus, the Silver Surfer, who after an intense battle, defeated him to the point of near death, thus causing the arrival of the Grim Reaper, the Black Racer, to collect from the battlefield the soul of the fallen god. However, surprisingly, the Silver Surfer would stand against that in his passionate and focused gaze at the Black Racer, since Orion was technically still alive, which caused the Black Racer to hesitate, since he never seen a reaction like the Silver Surfer before, when at that moment Orion used the mother box to recover. Succeeding this, now back in his quadriplegic state, a sign of hope from his brother-in-law that he could walk again would temporarily be interrupted by an explosion that knocked down the room's wall, revealing an invasion by Darkseid's parademons outside. Meanwhile, Verna had to be rushed to the next room by her husband after being injured on her head, which gave Willie the opportunity to turn into the unstoppable force who cannot be reasoned with, brought off, threatened, intimidated, killed, seduced, or manipulated any way, while collecting the souls a second after they are marked for death, so they don't have to go through the pain he has to live through. Moreover, his arrival made even the parademons fear and flee, but not Victor Stone, also known as Cyborg, and Wally West, the Flash, who dared to oppose his mission, which is a death sentence, when they tried to prevent him from taking the soul of a young girl they swore to protect, which was the beginning of the great race against those who fear death, as Wally somehow created a chain reaction in the Black Racer's side, temporarily causing him to feel pain, which he hadn't felt in a long time. Subsequently, Wally West would escape with the girl by using a boom tube, which with the extra energy from the Black Racer caused a more powerful electromagnetic wave that inadvertently took out every parademon on the globe, coincidentally saving the lives the Black Racer was supposed to take. Unfortunately, thereafter, in a fate of irony, the Black Racer's new victim was his brother-in-law, who was to die at the hands of a mugger that night, which, as much as the Black Racer wanted to prevent from happening, his will would not allow it. Following this, Willie, now back in his normal state of being, finally understood that the fear and pain death causes was more than physical, as he went on to shed a tear for his sister's pain and brother-in-law's death. Succeeding this, the Black Racer will be present on New Genesis to warn the High Father from disturbing the soul of his deceased adoptive son, Orion, who was the only one that could wield the astral force which was needed to stop a weapon with the potential to annihilate the entire cosmos. Furthermore, Verna was shockingly revealed to Willie the burden of being his caretaker was taking a toll on her, since her husband was now dead and she would now have to go back to work after she got him a private nurse during the day, when suddenly Willie revealed his secret identity that was the Black Racer to her, as she gazed in shock and disbelief at his glimmering form, before he explained to her everything, including that the Black Racer is a separate entity that possessed the body of her brother, which if released, her brother would perish soon after, so he must remain merged within him to continue his mission along with better studying the human race. Following this, both the Black Racer and Verna would sense two souls leaving their bodies, since Verna was in his aura, so the Black Racer had to leave to get ready for events of great magnitude, which baffled Verna. Thereafter, when leaving the apartment building, the Black Racer would be shockingly confronted by a street gang of armed black men who deliberately and foolishly attacked him after knowing his true identity of Willie Walker, which posed a threat to their territory. Unsurprisingly, 2 would fall at his hands while the rest ran for their lives. Meanwhile, the Black Racer made his way into outer space to New Genesis, where he resurrected Orion to once again battle. They also resurrected Calabac to the death. However, it would be another new god by the name of Valkyra who sacrificed herself for Orion to live in exchange for her own demise, which the Black Racer would claim. Moreover, a decade later, a disturbance in the source would cause a ripple when Willie Walker was killed by Darkseid's heroic brother, the Infinity Man, who was now the prime agent of the source's will, as he took Willie's life along with other new gods after ripping out their hearts and collected their souls in a second source wall which surrounds the original one. Surprisingly, the Lord of Apocalypse, Darkseid, who was on a distant planet, noticed Willie's passing, although not immediately recognizing its significance. However, Willie would be reborn, and the swift, silent Black Racer remade anew, which Jay Jarrett, the original Golden Age Flash, along with Wally West, would be the first to witness, as he followed the God bullet to its prior target after it had been fired by Darkseid, using a high-dimensional gun to travel back through time to kill Orion, and Darkseid's end goal to overthrow reality, as the God bullet had already killed Orion in the past. So now 3 generations of Flash, which include the supposedly dead Barry Allen, race against death back in time within the Speed Force, trying to stop the God bullet from killing Orion, with Barry Allen shifting towards the speed of light to try and catch the God bullet. Unfortunately, they failed to prevent Orion's death. But now, Barry Allen was the new target of the Black Racer, so they decided to use the Black Racer to intercept a now mortally wounded Darkseid, who was sitting at the center of a personal singularity beyond the reach of light. So they now had to move at God's speed in order to outrun death in a time spiral, where Black Racer would divert the attention of Darkseid before he fired the bullet in the future to miss his mark, which interestingly, either the Source or the Speed Force may have created another form of death called the Black Flash, an entity that could run at the superluminal speeds required in order to catch speedsters. Nevertheless, in the end, 15 years from today, on Earth, where Darkseid will finally make his throne as the victor while having the human race herded into anti-life processors known as zombie factories to be stripped of their minds and replaced with endless crushing monotone of Darkseid's anti-life equation. Our last remaining heroes would attempt to paralyze all of Darkseid's slaves on Earth by disabling the anti-life broadcast array before our heroes begun to fall one by one, starting with the Amazon princess Wonder Woman in a brave attempt to buy the others' time, followed by the Aztec champion Azteca, along with the descendant of a very powerful and dangerous Hassan Natal race, Antonia Manetti, also known as Argent, while surprisingly next, the Dark Knight Crusader Bruce Wayne, famously known as Batman, will meet his end while having a smile on his face. Then Ray Palmer, also known as the scientist and superhero Atom, after entering Darkseid's brain and being consumed in the eye of his neural storm, as Oliver Queen, better known as Green Arrow, looked on in fear, preparing for his final fate. And lastly, the Black Racer's old friend, Orion, who already sensed death's presence, before activating a Genesis box in order to self-destruct the entire universe into pure energy so it can remake again, so nobody wins except death. That being said, Sergeant William Willie Walker is DC Comics' Black Racer.